Hey, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have the My Favorite Things Heart Art card kit. This kit is in fact sold out right now, but all the bits that come in this kit are still available, so I will have those linked down below. But let's go ahead and take a look at what came in this kit. I plan to make 5 cards using this kit, and that way hopefully you can be a little bit inspired. So this card does come with the Heart Trio shaker pouches. It also comes with the Heart Art stamp set, which is super cute. You could just stamp this, or they fit inside those pouches as well. It also comes with the Double the Love stencil. This is the dynamic, or not stencil, but the dynamic. And it comes with the Heart Trio shaker window, so that will cut the hearts out and it'll perfectly fit the Heart Trio shaker pouches. There's an idea sheet. It also comes with 5 smooth white heavyweight cardstock. So you got a lot of cardstock here. It comes with a piece of cotton candy cardstock, ripe raspberry, red hot, berrylicious, that's the berrylicious, and then it comes with blue raspberry, wild wisteria, and gravel gray. So lots of cardstock. All right, let's go ahead and get started making some cards. For card number 1, I am going to start out using that love die along with the My Favorite Things Stitched Basic Edges die. And I'll line that up on some of that cherry cardstock, red hot cardstock. And then I'm going to just tape that down with some micro pour tape. And then I'm going to run that through my Big Shot machine. This will give me just a small panel after lining all that up, and I'll save the love itself for another card. You will see that again. And so after peeling off the dies, you'll see what we're left with. If I can get that peeled off. And then I'm going to set that aside to start working on my panel. So my card base is just some of that smooth white cardstock that came in the kit, and I cut it down to 4 1/4 by 11 inches and then scored it at 5 1/2 inches to make a top folding A2 size card. And I have some of the My Favorite Things Dots and Stripes Bright Pack, and I trimmed down some of the orange, green, blue, and purple to about 3/4 of an inch, and then I covered that panel with just some tape runner that I had because I figured that would be a lot easier than using liquid glue. And now I'm just sticking those down, I suppose in rainbow order, but not really because the red, pink, we're missing some of those colors. So I just did orange, green, blue, purple, orange, green, blue, purple. And made sure that those were nice and secure. And then once I'm done making sure those are all on there, I will flip that over and just use my cutter bee scissors to trim off the excess. I didn't do a great job of trimming off the first set, so I will trim off a little bit more. This is where having longer scissors would be a little bit more helpful. I almost picked up some of the Tim Holtz shears the other day because they had them for 40% off at Hobby Lobby, but I didn't. I had a little self-control, which now, after watching this, I wish I hadn't. All right, for my panel itself, the one that I have love die cut out of, I am just going to back that with some foam tape. This is the Scotch foam tape. I'm going to make sure I cover that whole back with it. And then when I have that all covered, I will peel off the backing paper. And then I'm going to adhere that to my card base. So that way all that striped pattern will show through. And once that is adhered to the card base, I will add the O back in for the love because I do have some foam tape on the little dot for the O, and I'll stick that back in there, and then I will peel out the O itself. And that'll finish off the card, at least for this. But I do end up adding some moonshine confetti, as you can see in this card. So that was an afterthought. For card number 2, I'm going to do a little ombre stamping. So I have a piece of Nina cardstock. No, actually, this is the cardstock that came in the kit. This is that smooth white cardstock, and I've trimmed that down so that the little candy hearts or the little hearts that come from the Heart Art stamp set will fit just perfectly onto that panel. And I've put it inside my Mini Misty because I really don't know of another way that you could do this. So you would have to have some sort of a stamp positioner in order to do this kind of ombre stamping. I don't know how it would work otherwise. So I'm going to start off with some Squeezed Lemonade Distress Oxide ink, and as you can see, I am stamping up those top two hearts, and I'm kind of going down into the middle two hearts. I'm going to take my microfiber cloth and I'm going to soften those edges on the middle two hearts, and then I will stamp that down. And that's how we get started. And I'm going to do it twice so that I have a good impression there, but I won't show you both times. So then I'm going to move on. After I've cleaned off my stamp, I'm going to move on to the second color, which is called Sponge Sugar, and this is the Distress Oxides as well. And I stamped in the middle two hearts and the top, the bottom part of the top two and the top part of the bottom two. And I softened those edges once again, and then I'm going to stamp that down, and I'm going to do that twice as well. And then moving on to those bottom two hearts, I'm using the Abandoned Coral, and once again covering up those bottom two and then going into the middle two so that I have a nice ombre stamped look, and I end up loving how this looks. For my Love die, and this is the die once again that comes from the set, this is called the Double Love. I didn't cut my cardstock long enough, so I'm having to just do the LOV through my Sizzix Sidekick, and then I will line up that last piece just for the E. I didn't want to waste those pieces, so I will line up the E, and then I will run that through once again. It's kind of embarrassing that I didn't quite measure, but that's how it goes sometimes, right? And then I'll set those off to the side and get ready to assemble my card. To assemble my card, I'm using some foam tape on the back of that ombre panel, and I'm going to cover the whole back of that. I will line up my card base onto my glass mat so that I can get this lined up perfectly, peel off the backing paper of that foam tape, and then I will put that panel down onto the card base. And then to adhere the love, I am just using a little bit of foam tape on those edges, anything that hangs over, and then I'm using liquid glue to adhere the E there. And I'm using my T-ruler to make sure that everything stays lined up. And as you can tell, I have just a little bit of foam tape on that edge of the L so that everything lines up. And then I have a little bit of liquid glue on the tip of the L. And then I'll use the liquid glue on the O and the V, trying to line those up very nicely and keep those straight. This is a very simple card actually, but that technique of the ombre stamping really just makes this card pop. And that will finish off card number 2. I love how it turned out. I'm going to do more of that ombre stamping for sure. Card number 3 is going to be a shaker. So I'm going to take that panel of cardstock that came in the kit, and I'm just going to add a little bit of micro pour tape to the back of the cardstock, and then I'm going to stick the stencil on top. And that stencil is the Full of Heart stencil. So I'm going to line that up as best I can to make sure it's kind of straight. And once I get that adhered down, just by adhering it to the back, that way I don't have any of the tape showing through, and then I don't, while I'm blending over the top using the Broken China Distress Oxide ink and a mini ink blending tool, I won't have any of that tape in the way. So I'm just going to blend that all over, not real heavy, but just enough. I thought that matched the cardstock from the kit pretty well. And then I will peel that back and then clean up my mess. I am going to use the Heart Trio Shaker window die that came in the kit. I'm going to line that up using my T-ruler. Just tack that down using a little bit of micro pour tape in the center there. And then I will run that through my Big Shot machine. And I also ran it through on a piece of white cardstock. That was the smooth white that came in the kit. And I'm going to take each of those little hearts, and I'm going to grab 3 of the hearts from the Heart Art stamp set, and I am going to ink those up with some little cubes. Those are the My Favorite Thing cubes, and that first one is Daffodil, pardon my head, and I'm just stamping that down onto the heart. The next color I grab is called Orange Fizz, and I will stamp that on another heart. This was the easiest way I found. With those being clear stamps, it's really easy to just see right through them and make sure that you stamp right onto the heart where you want it. Clean those off in between, and then that final color is just called bubblegum. So these are just the My Favorite Things ink cubes. And I believe they have their inks on sale right now as of filming. I could be wrong. But if they do, I will have that linked down below. And so I'll stamp that last one out as well. Moving on, I want to adhere those to another piece of white cardstock. So I've lined up the card front that I have, and I'm just putting a little bit of glue on the hearts that you can see through, and then I will stick my hearts onto that glue, onto that white cardstock. So that's the easiest way I found to make sure they're all lined up correctly. And then I will adhere my shaker window to the back of my card front. And I don't suggest using the liquid glue like I did. If you're going to use a liquid glue, I would use the Tim Holtz or the Ranger ink multimedia matte. That stuff dries quickly. This liquid glue I used did not dry so quickly, so it did take a little bit of time. I'm just using some moonshine confetti sequins that I have. These are actually from Simon Says Stamp, but I just used a little bit of those on the inside, and then I am going to cover the back of my card front with some score tape. I want to make sure that this thing does not move anywhere. So I am covering that entire back. I used 1/4 inch and I also used 1/8 inch score tape. So I will have that linked down below as well. And then I just peeled off all the backing, and then I adhere that to the top, or that piece there, making sure that I go all around those hearts really well so that none of that confetti falls out. So I have a nice shaker. And to adhere that to my card base, which is some more cardstock from the kit, I'm just using some liquid glue, and then I will center that over my card base. And for a final bit, I will just take one of those other little blue hearts and I will stick it on the inside. That way I'm not wasting any of them. I'll just use a little liquid glue to adhere that to the inside. And that's actually going to finish off card number 4. Or card number 3, my bad. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Card number 4 is going to be another little shaker card, and I'm going to use some other products from My Favorite Things. So I cut out some fresh squeezed chevron 6x6 pattern paper using a stitched rectangle, and I also ran the vertical love through my my Big Shot machine as well, using some black cardstock. I'm also going to use the Free with 60 that came along with the kit if you've spent $60, and this matches perfectly with those little hearts that come in the Heart Art stamp set. So I am going to use that on top of my pattern paper, and I'm going to get that love to line up vertically. But before I do that, I'm going to grab one of the Heart Trio shaker pouches, and I'm actually going to cut off one of the pouches. Don't panic. I can I can use it with the little Free with 60, so I was pretty excited about that. So I'll line that up on my grid mat, which is my Tim Holtz glass media mat. And I love this mat. It's easy cleanup. And I'm just going to line those letters up along with the die so that I can get good placement. And when I think I have good placement down, I'll actually go ahead and adhere those letters down to that pattern paper using some liquid glue. So that way I can make sure and have that die lined up just exactly where I want it. So it was really pretty simple. I'm just following along that middle line because the die actually cuts out a 4 inch by 5 1/4 inch square or rectangle. And then once that's adhered, I'll use some micropore tape to adhere the die down, and then I'll run that through my Big Shot machine as well. This is where I grabbed the Ranger Multimedia Matte liquid glue to adhere my pouch, my shaker pouch, to the back of my card front. And this stuff dries very quickly and it works really, really well. So I've decided I just have a scrap piece of white cardstock, and originally I thought, I don't know why I was thinking this, I would just stick my sequins down, which are the Studio Katia Fruit Punch ones, and then I went ahead and adhered some of that tape to the back, just making sure that I completely covered around the heart, and then I went ahead and dumped my sequins inside there That was obviously the faster and easier way. And then I'll go ahead and adhere that white piece of scrap cardstock to the back. And I will make sure and press down really, really well. Then I will adhere my card panel to my card base, which is some of that smooth white cardstock that came in the kit. I'm just using liquid glue to adhere this all down. And then it just needed a little something extra, so I grabbed those Studio Katia Fruit Punch sequins. These are 6mm, and then I sprinkled those pretty liberally all over the front. And I'll use my crystal katana along with that liquid glue to pick up those sequins and glue those sequins down. I love this crystal katana. It is a little bit of an investment because it's over $20, but it's a great tool. I love mine. And that'll actually finish off card number 4. So I love how this one turned out as well. Super fun. Now on to the final card for this kit. I have cut down some of the cardstock that came in the kit, and I'm going to use some of that gravel gray cardstock. I trimmed that down to 4 inches by 5 1/4, and I'm using the stencil from My Favorite Things called Lots of Hearts, and I have taped it to the back of the stencil with some painter's tape, and I also just taped that down to my glass mat. I am going to use some Nouveau Glimmer paste in the color Moonstone along with a palette knife. I'm just going to spread that over the top, kind of like you would butter, I suppose. And I'm doing a very thin layer, and I'm just making sure that I have that entire background covered. This stuff is so beautiful, and I mean, it looks clear, or you know, it's basically a clear, but putting it over different cardstocks, different colors of cardstock, gets this. I love the way this looks when I pull back the stencil. So I'll pull that back and I'll take that over to the sink and clean off my palette knife and my stencil so that none of that sticks to my stencil and ruins it. So look at that. Oh, so pretty. So while that's drying, I'm going to get my card base ready, and that's some of that wild wisteria that I have cut down to 4 1/4 inches by 11 inches, and I scored at 5 1/2 inches. This will be a side folding A2 size card. I'm using a scrap of some of the Red Hot, and I am stamping down one of the hearts from the Heart Art stamp set using some Black Soot Distress Oxide ink, and I did that a couple times. So then I will use the Free with 60 die that came after I spent $60, and I'm just going to tape that down over the top of my heart, and then I'll run that through my Sizzix Sidekick. Y'all know I love my Sidekick. So easy peasy, ran that through, and then I will set that aside and get my card ready to assemble. So it didn't take long for this glimmer paste to dry. I did speed it up a little bit with my heat gun. I'm not sure that this was totally necessary because it dried pretty quickly. I would say all in all it probably took maybe 10-15 minutes to dry. And I love how that shines. So I'm going to glue this down just using some craft tacky glue that I have. And then to make sure that stays put, because it's a little bit heavier, I had set that underneath a stamp block. And then while I did that, I covered my letters with some foam tape. And now I'm using my T-ruler to make sure that I get those all lined up really well, because I don't think that liquid glue would have worked so well over the top of that glimmer paste. That is very textured. And so the best thing I found was to go ahead and use this foam tape. And I didn't like where my letters were, but thankfully it didn't tear the letters up. And these letters actually came from the first card that I made. So I'm using up the L and the V and the E. And once those are all adhered, this card didn't need anything else. Maybe a sentiment on the inside, something like that, but otherwise on the outside it was perfectly fine with all that glimmer paste and the love sentiment itself. This card turned out really pretty. So let's go ahead and take a look at the 5 cards that I made today. I would love to know which one of the 5 was your favorite, if you did have one. That's my favorite part of making all these cards, is always finding out which ones you guys like the best. If you liked this video, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, because I always have videos coming out. And as always, guys, I do appreciate you stopping by. Bye!